Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in.
Enter, rejoice, and come in, and welcome to our Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of San Diego. And may we all have a joyful day today. It is certainly my joy to be here in your physical presence rather than on my computer at home on Zoom. So, my name is Livia Walsh, and I'll serve as your worship associate this morning. It is also my joy to be joined by our speaker this morning, Mike Reeske, and I'll introduce him a little bit more later on. If you are attending the service on Zoom, we invite you to go get your candles so we can all light the chalice together this morning. If you wish to know more about our fellowship, we encourage you, and especially if you're a visitor, to go to our website at UUFSD.org, where you'll find a whole lot of information about this fellowship. And after the service, you're welcome to connect with the ushers or the greeters or me if you have some questions. And if you are visiting today, we invite you to be our guests for coffee and snacks during our social hour after the service, where you can also connect with us. We'll all be up there with questions or just to say hello to you. And please, all of you who are members or regular folks here, please welcome our greeters. Okay. We come together to affirm our commitment to this community and to our UU principles that guide us in living an ethical and moral life. Welcome. We're glad you're all here this morning. So I have a few announcements. The first one, for many of you who regularly attend, we don't have an order of service this morning. So I will do the best I can to keep us flowing and kind of cue folks about what to do when and what the music is and so on, okay? Our first announcement is that Linda Luisi, if Linda would stand, she will be organizing a group to go and visit Mike Reeske's farm out in Valley Center, which many of our fellowship folks have already visited and found a really inspiring and fun day with Mike. So you can get in touch with Linda via, well, go to the directory, but you'll put something in the order of service or a newsletter or something, right? Yeah, okay. We are engaged at this time of year in one of our favorite projects, which is our backpack project. We bring slightly used or new backpacks and some fillings for them every Sunday and then we deliver them. The backpack project will end on August 16th, after which we'll deliver them to the children in need. And we have a table for you, so if you'd like to donate money or items, Liz Young, who is in the back here, will be there and welcome and offer gratitude for whatever you're able to give. I just wanted you to know that you'll see buckets of flowers on many Sundays, not every Sunday, that are up in the core area. Those flowers are donated by Trader Joe's. Irv and I typically pick them up on Saturday, and when we were not in physical presence, we distributed them to people who were having a rough time, and to neighbors and so on. So please feel free to take a bunch, and especially if you know someone who could use a little smile today, please bring some flowers to them, okay? So now we invite you to stand and join us as we sing our gathering hymn. If you have masks and you're near people, we would appreciate it if you would put your mask on while you're singing if you're close to folks. And Jan Berlin will come and guide us in the singing. Jan? Oh, 347. Gather the Spirit. Sorry. Please be seated. Our call to worship this morning is offered by Walter Royal Jones Jr. Mindful of truth ever exceeding our knowledge and community ever exceeding our practice, reverently we covenant to begin together, beginning with just ourselves, to share the integrity and the heritage of the Spirit in the unending quest for wisdom and love. Our fellowship acknowledges the First Nation people who first lived on this beautiful land where our fellowship meets and where we all live. This has been the traditional home of the Luiseño and Kumeyaay people, including the 18 tribes and bands of the Kumeyaay Nation in which San Diego County is located. Their descendants still live here today. We must actively work with our indigenous neighbors to right the injustices caused by our ancestors, by us, and by our institutions. I don't think that candle's going to last. It's this way. I'm going to ask our speaker this morning, Mike Reeske, to light our chalice this morning. Here today in this place and with these people, may we listen so that we can hear. May we hear so that we can feel. And may we feel so that we can know. And may we know so that we can change ourselves and this world for the better. May this chalice we light today light our way. And please join us now in singing our centering hymn, number 123, Spirit of Life. I'm going to invite us to sing that in English today because it's a lot of flipping back and forth pages. So it's page 123. Jan, do you want to come up? As you stand to sing our centering hymn, please remain standing as we recite our covenant together. May love be the spirit of this congregation. May the quest for truth be its sacrament, and service be its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, and to help one another in fellowship. This is our covenant. Thank you. Please be seated. Jan. Jan Baloo. Thank you, Jan. That was just beautiful. Thank you. May we generously give financially to support this fellowship and sustain its well-being. And this fellowship is so dear to us, so we ask you to give generously. We will now receive the morning offering with gratitude. We will have our intergenerational sharing, and we do see some kids, so if we could have our children come and join us right here with Mr. Reeske, he has a special activity for you. So we saw two children somewhere. There's one, and the parents can come up too. Yeah, why don't you want parents come up too? Yeah. Yeah, come on up.
This is a story for children of all ages, particularly. Many of you have heard this, I'm sure, before, but it still is a great one. So I want you all to think, have you ever seen an elephant panic? You know what an elephant looks like? What does an elephant look like? It's big. Does it have a color? Gray? Does it have a big nose or a small nose? What do you think, Ben? Oh, okay. That's a yes for a big nose. Well, I'm going to tell you a story that the Buddha taught people about elephants. Elephants that sometimes people don't see altogether. And I want you to imagine that there are people that come, and I want you to imagine that your eyes are closed. So I want you to, both of you, close your eyes right now. And I want you to think that the Buddha called on blind men to go and touch the elephant. And the first blind man put out his hand and he touched the side of the elephant. How smooth an elephant is. It's like a wall. The second blind man put out his hand and touched the trunk of the elephant. That's his nose. And he said, how round an elephant is, like a snake. The third blind man put out his hand and he touched the tusk of the elephant. That's sort of like his teeth, the tusk. And he said, how sharp an elephant is, like a spear. The fourth blind man put out his hand and touched the leg of the elephant. How tall an elephant is, like a tree. The fifth blind man reached out his hand and touched the ear of the elephant. Can you see the ears, those big ears? And he said, how wide? An elephant is like a fan. The sixth blind man put out his hand and he touched the tail of the elephant. And he said, how thin an elephant is, like a rope. Now, as people listened to this, and they heard all about it, and you can open your eyes now. Did that really describe an elephant, each one of those people? Was an elephant like a tree? A little bit, wasn't it? Yeah. But everybody who was touching the elephant had a different idea of what it is. And only when they opened their eyes and shared do they get a bigger picture. And the real story behind all of this is we all need to open our eyes and see many parts of the elephant, or what we may call an elephant, in our lives. Thank you. I'm going to give you now, and you can't open this. I have one, but more will come. This is box number 4. You may not open it right now. And in fact, all of you are going to get a box. It's Christmas in July. And time to use your vivid imaginations. Coming soon to a speaker near you, me. So if you'll take this, take it back to your seat, and we'll move on.
So let's sing the children out to the playground, and Colin, who's in the back here, will escort the children, and Gloria and Danielle will also be in the playground to be with the kids today. Place, love gives light to every face. May the kindness which we learn light our hearts till we return. As we leave this friendly place, love gives light to every face. May the kindness which we learn light our hearts till we return. Today we wish to acknowledge the sorrows and the joys experienced by our community. For those of you who are with us via Zoom, we invite you to either silently speak your joy or sorrow or put it in the chat box. And just so you know, the pastoral care team does check the chat box. And for those of you who are here, I invite you now to come up and take a stone and drop it in the water and silently speak your joy or your sorrow. Can you play a little something? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. For those sorrows shared in any form this morning and those that remain unspoken, we hold you with compassion. And for those who shared a joy this morning, we smile and celebrate with you. Kevin Birchby is our pastoral listener this morning. There he is. Hi, Kevin. Thank you. He will be available after the service if you would like to speak with Kevin for pastoral support. May we enter a time of meditation, reflection, or prayer. And for those of you who know our chant, please join me in singing it. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe As I'm introducing our speaker this morning, the ushers will be passing out some mystery boxes, and we'll ask you to share, maybe three, okay, in pairs of three or tries of three. The two of you can share this one. And Mike will give you some instructions, but don't open them until he gives you instructions. Okay. So it is my joy to introduce to you a very special being. Mike Reeske grew up in Anaheim, California, where his parents were orange ranchers and restaurant owners. He graduated from Chapman University and began teaching high school science, a career that spanned for more than 40 years. During this time, Mike opened the Orange County Marine Institute in Dana Point Harbor as its education director. He developed the outdoor education program on Palomar Mountain for the Vista Unified School District, and he worked 12 years as a writer and developer for the Science Education for Public Understanding program at UC Berkeley. Mike has co-authored 13 books, primarily focusing on science and the environment. A couple of the titles are Science and Sustainability, Understanding Environmental Health Risks, and Plastics in Our Lives. And his most recent book deals with natural systems, and it's titled The Life Cycle of Everyday Stuff. Mike, it's our joy. So it's over to you.
Well, good morning again. It's good to greet you a second time and say what a beautiful day it is here. And as I was walking through the spaces of the grounds, one of the things that I saw here, which was very interesting, was that surrounded by you is what really is almost native California chaparral. And in fact, the first thing that I saw, which struck me and told me that things have not been disturbed here for a long time, is this bush that's right behind you with the tiny little leaves on it. It's called chamise. How many people have ever heard of that before? It actually has a common name. It's called greasewood. That's an indicator of the chaparral. And it's the one that provides a lot of fuel for fires. That's why chaparral has to burn 60 to 80 years to be renewed, because so much of this material builds up that it outcompetes everything else. And there it goes. And there are things in the soil that will regenerate. And it's interesting to see the lemonade berry, some of these other things that are here. So I feel right at home here. I live in the chaparral. When I built my own home, I restored a lot of what used to be there with sycamores, native oaks, and other native plants. So I think it's good to always be somewhat in harmony with nature. And that point is going to be driven home very shortly to all of us again in terms of our landscape. You know, we're in the verge of a historical, if not epidemic, drought in California. Fortunately, in San Diego, we have reserves of water. But 50 out of the 58 counties in San Diego are not that lucky. There are counties that have actually no water coming up from the ground. So the more that we can do to conserve water, to plant wisely, is a good thing. Or as my wife said, if the only one that walks on the grass is the guy that cuts it, what's it doing there? Ever thought about that? So today I'm going to bring you an interesting perspective, both from the standpoint of science and also of values, and show you how they intersect in the early 20th century in physics, is what I'm going to reference myself to. And I'm going to let you know, maybe some of you know about this, the inspiration for this is Jacob Bernowski. Has anybody ever heard of Bernowski? Well, he wrote a book called The Ascent of Man. And I'll refer to it later. But a really interesting book, in fact, which I based a year sabbatical on, traveling to all those sites, seeing them, and enjoying them. And I recommend that really highly. It's also a video series that you can pick up, 13 parts by the BBC. So my talk today, and you may have thought about it as you came in here, you say, what is this guy going to talk about? Knowledge or certainty? What does that mean? Well, we shall see. Because in our lives today, we all think we have knowledge, and many people think they're damn sure of it. I met a seer. He held in his hands the book of wisdom. Sir, I addressed him. Let me read. Think not that I am a child, for I already know. I know much of what that you hold. Much. He smiled. Then he opened the book and he held it before me. Strange that my eyes should have grown so suddenly blind. One of the aims of the physical sciences that we think of today is to give an exact picture of what the material world is. One achievement of physics in the 20th century has been to basically prove that that aim is unobtainable. That may surprise you. Saying science, it's unobtainable? Now, I want you to think, and I want you to close your eyes now, and I want you to imagine an older man's face, probably about 90 years old, who's Polish, who's survived World War II and all of what went with it. I want you to see a woman who now is a blind woman, but she takes her hands and she runs it over the face of this 90-year-old Polish man. She says, I would think that he is elderly. As she runs her fingertips over the face. I would say he is not English. He has a rounder face than most English people. And I should say that he's probably continental, if not Eastern continental. The lines in his face would be the lines of possible agony. I thought at first there were scars. It's not a happy face. We are aware when we look at pictures, just like touching a face, that this picture, this touching, does not so much fix the face, but explores it. That is, the artist is tracing the detail almost by touch. And that each line that is added strengthens the picture, but never makes it final. We accept this as a method of the artist. And what physics now teaches us this is that this is the only method to knowledge. There is no absolute knowledge. And those who claim it, whether they are scientists or dogmatists, open the door to tragedy. All information is imperfect. We have to treat it with humility. That is the human condition, and this is also what modern physics says to us today. You heard a poem earlier that was written by Stephen Crane. I don't know if any of you remember Stephen Crane. I was assigned to read when I was a young ninth grader in high school as a freshman, The Red Badge of Courage. You've probably all heard of that. And that's probably what he's most known for. But he also wrote a series of poems that just, as like many writers, it just exploded out of him. I think of him like Mozart in that respect. Mozart never sat at a piano, composed, and rewrote. Everything came out, all the notes at once. And these poems were like that. And this comes from a small book, the first one, that was written in 85 called The Black Riders. And this is called Once There Was a Man. Once there was a man who said, "Range me all the men of the world in rows." You see them all in rows? And instantly, there was a terrific clamor among the people against being ranged in rows and those who would not. There was a loud quarrel worldwide. It endured for ages, and blood was shed. But by those who would not stand in the rows, and those who pined to stand in them. Eventually, the man went to his death, weeping. And those who stayed in bloody scuffle knew not the great simplicity. Let's discover another way to explore the way that we perceive things. Besides counting elephants in our sleep, let's explore how knowledge is limited by our senses. Now, all of you have what I call black boxes. Now, they're really not black, but they're black in the sense that we don't know what's in them. I'm going to ask that you as a group share a box, and by using your senses and reasoning powers, describe as closely as possible to each other what you think may be inside. You should share the box with all the people. There isn't just one person that has it. Everybody has a clue. Unfortunately, it's not wrapped. As a child, I would tear the wrappers off to see if I could see what the gift was, but no, they're pretty plain. So go ahead and share those, and let's take a few minutes to explore. Think about how you can measure how long or short or what the shape might be. All the different things that you can kind of learn from this box. In a minute. Have we figured out if there's one or more objects? Good. Some are obvious. Some are not so obvious. Or as my wife said, I put this in to trick them. Okay, let's stop for just a second and reflect. What kind of observations were you unable to make? Anyone? The color. Maybe not quite the shape. Some people have an idea of the shape. Maybe. The quantity. Were you able to tell the quantity? What about texture? Well, this is a good one. Is it living or non-living? Oh, that's good. Let me ask you a question. How do you think we could extend our senses by using instruments that are extensions of our senses? What could we do? We could weigh it. Exactly. That's the first one. X-ray. Exactly. We could poke a hole and use fiber optics. That's right. That's a great extension of your senses. So, all of these things give us a description of what's inside. But does it give us the answer? Let's open the boxes. And by the way, these are boxes you can take home. They're actually bean shipping boxes, and 2 pounds of beans. See, this is great. Yeah. An IQ stimulating activity by plus 1/2 point. So it's really interesting that when we open the box, as we look at this, some of the things that we saw are confirmed, but our imaginations sometimes lead us in the wrong direction. And that's exactly what happens in all of our parts of life. Our preconceptions, our expectations, those are the kinds of things that many times lead us astray. It's much harder to just let things be. Now, the question I have for you is, now that you see it, is that, naming it, is that still telling you everything about it? Is there more to learn about it? Like, for instance, can I eat those cherries? Who had the cherries? Yeah. Yes, you can. Who had the potato? Who had the large avocado pit? You can actually take that and plant that, by the way. That's called a reed avocado. Big round ones. They're quite tasty, actually. But the problem is, the more that we look at things, the more we get out of them. It's also like our own relationships with people. I was talking to one of my workers, and he said, I'm having, at 30 years old, I'm really having trouble dating. Does that ring a bell with anybody? Okay. Well, he says, I really envy you and your wife. You've been married 53 years. And I said, well, what's the problem? And he said, I'm looking for something more in life than just the person who's sitting on their phone, as I'm talking to them and they're going swoosh looking for the next contact, or doesn't attend to me, or doesn't have a real conversation where they acknowledge me. And I'm tired of being treated as a thing. Martin Buber, I don't know if any of you read I and Thou, talked about this, that many of us are used to making ourselves into things, and other people the same way. And what we have to do is look for that communication, that knowledge, that interchange of minds between people. And that was my advice to him. It wasn't, well, Sonny, just wait around, the right one will come along. That doesn't do you any good when you're 30 years old. But the attitude of seeking the knowledge, understanding someone else and having that conversation comes in the most surprising ways. Think about the significant people in your own life. Your children, your parents, your best friends. When I think of my best friend, I think of somebody I met when I was 16 years old that I still see today. In fact, we wrote a book together called Wine Faults, where he's an enologist studying Washington State, and the book was, why are these Washington State wines so bad, especially the red ones? or if you've ever been to a brewery and you taste the beer and you say, oh, this is kind of sour. Or in wine, it tastes like fingernail polish remover. It smells like that. You know what that's a result of? It's called cleanliness. Everything has got to be completely clean all the time that you go. Because a little bacteria in the air, if you give them the right message, they'll reproduce and ruin everything for you. So when we wrote this book, it was interesting because it reflected on the relationship that we had had. That was a conversation that has now gone on for 58, 60 years. And you can always tell that because it isn't like going to a high school reunion. Do you remember the last one you went to, if you even decided to go? You know, it was mainly reminiscences, correct? But with a good friend, you begin the conversation almost where you left it off because there's an area of trust. I worked with a group of boys in the YMCA for 4 years. I was their advisor. And at the end of the 4 years, you know, I got a job where they went to high school and they went on. And their 50-year reunion, they all got back together again. And one of the things that happened there, I'll just share it with you because it was very interesting, was that I asked the question, and this is where we had left off. Where we left off before was the Vietnam War. Where we began this time was, tell me about what you've learned in this life. How would you answer that question? Well, we had quite a sharing and quite an opening of feelings. And everybody at once realized, wow, we were really a group. We mean something to each other. So again, we're going to meet again in October and talk about what we learned from our experience in the pandemic. So it's interesting. Knowledge is always tentative. It's always something that we seek and try to explore. And there is no perfect way to learn anything, you know. And when people say there is absolute knowledge, and those who claim it, whether they are scientists or dogmatists, open the door to tragedy. Think about that for a second. All information is imperfect. We have to treat it with humility. This is the human condition, and this is also what modern science says to us. I mean this quite literally. Truth, said a traveler, is a rock, a mighty fortress. Often have I been to it, even to its highest tower, from whence the world looks black. Truth, said a traveler, is a breath, a wind, a shadow, a phantom, even long as I have pursued it, but never have I touched the hem of its garment. And I believe the second traveler, for truth was to me a breath, a wind, a shadow, a phantom, and never had I touched the hem of its garment. One of the great tragedies of our time was when people were perfecting this idea of which is called uncertainty. How many people have ever heard that term before? Uncertainty doesn't mean we're not certain. It just means that there are limits to what we can know. We can actually define those limits. And in fact, it actually came out from a man called Gauss. I don't know if you ever heard of the Gaussian curve, but if I said to you, you all remember the standard curve, right? In college classes especially, you know, which describes a lot of things about behavior, especially of groups. And it always comes out that way, you know. We used to call people in our class, you know, when we were grading that way, the DARs. You say, who are DARs? Darned average raisers. Oh no, there's Sheldon Cooper. He's in our class. You see it? Okay. Well, this came out. Gauss actually was an astronomer, he was a mathematician, and he was trying to plot with his new telescope in Göttingen, which is a university town in Germany, much like Yale or Cambridge, you know, on its way to nowhere and full of nice professors who like to talk to each other. And he basically plotted the position of this star. And you might think with a telescope you would know what it was. But after he did it many times, he actually got this scatter, this curve of uncertainty. And he then, of course, was the one that put forth this idea of uncertainty. But I don't like to use the name of uncertainty. It's a bad name. I'd rather call it of what we're not certain. And so our knowledge is merely confined to a certain tolerance. We should call it the principle of tolerance. Interesting, isn't it? Here's a scientific proof of it. But it's the principle of that tolerance. And I propose that name in two senses. First, in the engineering sense. Science has progressed step by step, the most successful enterprise in human history, because it has understood that the exchange of information between man and nature, can not only take place and can take place within a certain tolerance. But also, I use the word passionately about the real world. All knowledge, all information between human beings can only be exchanged with a play of tolerance. To understand that there are different points of view, there are different understandings that we need to come to, just like understanding the elephant or what was in the boxes. And that is true whether the exchange is in science, in literature, or in religion, or in politics, or any form of thought that aspires to dogma. It is a major tragedy of my life and yours that the principle of tolerance became well known, accepted in the 20s and 30s, but a dark force of absolute certainty was emerging again in that same period of time. In the years before World War I, the sky was darkening over Germany. And of course, most of you know that the results of that. I call to your attention to just one thing. In the early 1800s, there was a collector of skulls. His name was Blumenbach. And he collected all of these human skulls. And it was very interesting to look like. But when the party came after his death in 1840, it was added to the collection more and more. And by the time the Nationalist Party came into power in 1933, the tradition of scholarship and free thought and questioning practically disappeared overnight in Germany. It is an irony of the history, it is an irony of history when the principle of tolerance, fixed once for all, that knowledge is limited, that those would arise under Hitler in Germany and other tyrants everywhere, as it is today, a counterconception, a principle of monstrous certainty. There are two parts to the human dilemma. One is the belief that the end justifies the means. It's that push-button philosophy, that deliberate deafness to suffering has become the monster in the war machine, wars that never cease. The other is the betrayal of the human spirit, the assertion of dogma that closes the mind and turns a nation, a civilization, into a regiment of ghosts, obedient ghosts, or tortured ghosts. It is said that science will dehumanize people and turn them into numbers. That is false, tragically false. A few summers ago, I traveled to Poland to search for my roots, searching for my grandfather. With a name like Reeske, interesting kind of search, who immigrated to America in the late 1800s. I began in Krakow, and as many of you know, have you ever been to Krakow? What's in Krakow? beautiful plowed fields, a beautiful city. It's still pretty much the same way it is. But if you go outside of Krakow a few miles, you're going to find the concentration camp and crematorium of Auschwitz. This is where people were turned into numbers. Into a pond were flushed the ashes of 4 million people. And that was not done by gas. It was done by ignorance. When people believe they have absolute knowledge with no test in reality, this is how they behave. That is what men do when they aspire to the knowledge of the gods. Science is a very human form of knowledge. We're always at the brink of what is known. We always feel forward for what is to be hoped. Every judgment in science stands on the edge of error and is personal. Science is a true tribute to what can be known, although we are fallible. In the end, the words were said by Oliver Cromwell. I beseech you, in the bowels of Christ, think it possible you may be wrong. On our journey in life is not a history of the descent of man, as Darwin would have led us to believe, but of the ascent of man to be a little less than the angels. And in this ascent, I think of it as 7 rungs on a ladder. The first one, where we all need to do, is to know the right thing, do the right thing. The first rung is conscientiousness, which leads us to understand tolerance. Tolerance gives us patience. Number 4, with patience, we can become more understanding. Number 3, when we understand, we can have empathy. And number 2, if we have empathy, we can also learn to forgiveness. And finally, the last step is love. The pond in Auschwitz sends a stark reminder that we have to cure ourselves of the itch for absolute knowledge and power. We have to close the distance between the push-button order and the human act. We have to touch people. We're going to end with not words, but music by the composer Gustav Mahler. I don't know if any of you have ever heard any of his work before. If you just raise your hand quickly. Well, good. Mahler was way ahead of his time. He was born in 1860 and died in 1911. And he was really an incredible person, but he was 50 years before his time. He lived for a while, and his music was basically forgotten. It wasn't until people like Leonard Bernstein revived his work and brought it to the forefront. And today, we can all experience some of those things. In a letter to a soprano, Mahler wrote, "Just imagine a work that we're going to hear today of such magnitude that it actually mirrors the whole world. One is, so to speak, only an instrument played on by the universe. My symphony will be something like which the world has never heard. In the whole of nature, in it, the whole of nature finds its voice." And Mahler said, the last movement is what love tells me. And so that's what we're going to hear, and I'd like you to listen and then meditate on how we all can be more loving and kind to each other.
Alexa, play Gustav Mahler's Symphony No. 3.
Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you. Please join me in reciting the words to extinguish the chalice this morning. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we hold in our hearts until we are together again. And please stand and join me in singing hymn number 318, We Would Be One. Please be seated. Our closing words this morning are from Rainer Maria Rilke from his book Letters to a Young Poet. I want to beg you as much as I can to be patient to all that is unsolved in your heart and try to love the questions themselves. Do not seek the answers, which cannot be given you because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. And perhaps one day, gradually, without noticing it, you may live on some long distant day into the answers. Peace be with you. Thank you.